Hey guys, if you've been watching our channel, you know that I just did a whole series on things that I brought back from the show of shows. I call it pillaging. Well, while I was out pillaging guns, Kurt was pillaging accessories. So I thought it would be good to show you some of the accessories that Kurt brought back. Before we do that, however, I have some giveaways. Now, I know how you guys like free stuff.
I like
Free stuff.
and I cannot lie.
So if you want to email us and say, I like free stuff, and let us know what you'd be interested in. First and foremost, you may remember this. We featured this on one of our videos, and we got two answers. One, it's a training tool for sighting your K98, and the other is it's for shooting around the corner. Both are entirely possible, but we actually do have photos of trainers using this device. And because we didn't know what it was, and you helped us determine what it was, we're going to give it away. So let us know if that's something you're interested in. We'll do a drawing, and let us know you like free stuff, but also you're interested in, what do we call that? The shoot around the corner, or the training.
Mirror device.
Mirror device, that's what it is. And then also we said, what the heck is this? It is a lighter, and we're going to give that away. So if you're interested in the lighters, just say, I like free stuff, lighter. And so this is kind of cool. These are original HSC grips, but you can see that somebody sanded down the check ring and did a little bit of what we would call trench art. And so therefore, yeah, they've been defaced in a way, but it's real history. So if you're interested in original HSC grips, let us know you like free stuff, HSC grips. And finally, something that I'm not able to use, but this is an original Wartime PPK grip. And the only problem with it is, well, it does have a little bit of warping, but it'll still fit on the gun. And then this is chipped, where the safety comes down and hits. That's chipped, and so I'm willing to give that away. It is original World War II black late war PPK grip. So let us know if you're interested, and we would be happy to, well, we'll do a drawing. If you're outside of the United States, you can still enter. However, you got to help us cover some of the shipping, because that can be pretty expensive. Okay? Hey, thanks. Thanks for your help on those videos. Now, Kurt, you have some stuff to show us. Do you want to start with some daggers?
Sure, I'd love to. What I have here is a great variety of different daggers that I saw at the last show of shows. I got quite a number more than what's showing here, but these are some great representative examples I'd love to talk more about. First, we'll start with the SA dagger. That's the one here on your far right. This is probably one of the more popular daggers that we see at the shows and that we offer on our website. There were multiple different SA groups, as we're all aware of now that we've watched and read your book, Tom. But the SA had their own dagger, and here's just an example of one. Oftentimes here on the handguard, you can see it on the example next to it, there's an abbreviation for the group, the SA group, or the NSKK group in this case, that it was going to. So that's one thing you want to look for. It wasn't always there, so on this SA, you don't see it. The SA dagger has the eagle emblem, SA emblem, a nice brown painted. They also had brown anodized, I believe, are the two styles. The anodized being more of like it's integrated into the metal, and that was earlier versus the painted style here that we're seeing, which is more wartime. On the blade itself, alles für Deutschland. You'll kill me on my pronunciation here, but all for the fatherland, all for Germany. This was their war cry, and on their hearts and minds. They, the collective group effort. It's RZM maker stamped. That M7-1 is a maker code, and I would need my resources to look up what that code means. But there are numerous different codes, and that's how the Germans like to do things. So that's an SA dagger. The only difference between this SA dagger and an NSKK dagger, this is an NSKK dagger, is the scabbard. The scabbard color is really it. It's really an SS scabbard on SA blade. Makes an NSKK. So the black painted scabbard here, they both have hangers. I didn't point that out before, but this is a leather hanger clip, RZM stamped They're on the back of the clip. They're often stamped there. Sometimes they're not marked, but that's where they attach to the belt. They attached in two places actually, so this one is not marked. As we can see, the clip is not marked. Sometimes it's marked on the strap itself. I don't see anything immediately on this one. But you see we have a hanger here, but then the other attachment point is higher up. This is the other portion of the hanger. This is the more scarce or seldom found style of hanger. Usually I guess it makes sense that this can come right off and then, whoop, I lost it. So that's why you don't see them as much. Whereas these are more attached to the O-ring on the scabbard. So you see a lot more of this style hanger, not so much the upper hanger. This one's very nicely RZM stamped. Again, there's an RZM stamp, and then this is the L2 code. What I've learned is actually a property code, or I guess a distribution center code that they stamped later on when they distributed the piece.
I was looking at the code, and it looks like it could be a BC, definitely a B. I don't know what the province that would be, or the SA group, the NSKK group, but one of our viewers will tell us what group that is. And also, it's also marked Alles für Deutschland.
And now I see it on this one. I don't know if this is being picked up. If Randy, you can pick this up on the camera, but if you get it just right in the light, you'll see a little bit of what we call cross graining, and it's horizontal machine markings that go back and forth real fine on the blade. That's the first thing I learned how to tell a real from a fake blade, is looking for that cross graining. Now, there are exceptions, and it's more involved than that, but one of the first things you want to look for when you're looking at World War II daggers is some cross graining on the blade. Sometimes it's a little more pronounced than others depending on the condition and the maker. Some makers had more of a pronounced cross graining from the machine, but that's what we look for.
Oh, one other tip that I learned is these will fit into the wood almost perfectly. I mean, you can't even slip a piece of paper in between the wood and the metal. On the fakes, and obviously there's quality fakes and then there's less quality fakes. The easy to tell is there'll be gaps. You'll see gaps between the wood and the metal, which just means it's more cheaply made. So that's another thing to look for. Okay, let's move on. I think I see some navies.
Yeah, these are two Kriegsmarine examples. I picked these two because you can obviously see the difference in handle. With a lot of the different German makers during World War II, you see different color handles. My understanding is this is almost something that you could request, or it's just they offered different colors, and certain officers would get a certain color because they liked the white. They had the white for their other dress dagger. I'm speculating, but just something that you notice, they had different options and styles for your handle. You even see, I've seen some of the braiding or the wiring inlay. I've seen it in gold. I've seen it in black or like a brownish patina. So I think even that came in different colors. Very detail-oriented Germans, and it really comes out in their daggers and their pageantry in the style of stuff that they made. This is the later style scabbard. It has kind of a floral oak leaf pattern around the rings here, and then a different style pattern with lightning bolts coming up. I guess from the ocean, because it's Kriegsmarine, I'm guessing. But they have this is the later pattern found on the Kriegsmarine daggers. The earlier pattern, it looks like a bunch of little dimples or almost like pebble graining like you see on a holster, and that's the earlier hammered scabbard is what we call it, a hammered or peened scabbard. These are two nice examples to show because of the beautiful etching on the blades. Notice they have a push button release too. Can't forget that. You'll damage your dagger if you do. So here we have two nice examples. Both are etched. I picked these two examples because they have different styles of etching. So that proves to us that different makers had different styles of etching. It wasn't as formulaic as maybe the United States was in their production, where things were, everything was the same, and it was There was no identity or nothing special. Not nearly as many variations in the United States produced things for the war during World War II. So here's the other side of the blade. This side of the blade, they both feature an anchor in the middle. You see the anchor in the middle on this one as well. This one, it's a little bit of a more faint etching, but this one features ships, where the other one by WKC features anchors. So you notice these two eagles are facing the opposite ways, but the blades are technically facing the same way. How does this happen? My guess is that someone took these apart. Often collectors do. They want to check what's underneath the blade here to make sure that it has the proper patina and it jives with the rest of the piece. So in taking off these pommels and then you unscrew them and then you screw them back on, collectors don't, especially us here at Legacy, we don't want to damage history. So you don't tighten it all the way down, and as a result you get a little bit of wiggle in the handguards oftentimes, a little bit of wiggle in the handle sometimes, and a little bit of wiggle in the pommel sometimes. That's not something to be alarmed or afraid of. It just means it's just the nature of it's older and it doesn't tighten down the second time as it did the first, and that's almost with anything you buy. So that's why you see them like this. It's a really cool opportunity for me to show you two examples of the same dagger by different makers and a little bit of a difference in style. All right, so we talked about some German stuff. I mentioned US. Our viewers like to see both sides of the spectrum. So here we have some United States daggers or knives. Unlike the Germans, the knives we were just looking at are more for pageantry and parades. The United States didn't have anything like that. We made our knives sort of for combat, and they had a purpose. The knife we first went with was the US M3 fighting knife. This is a nice early example of the M3 fighting knife by Imperial. You see it's marked on the blade. That's something that they did earlier. And it comes with a leather M6 Milsko scabbard. You see it's ordnance stamped on the scabbard. It should also be ordnance stamped on the pommel of the blade. Sometimes they're small and hard to see, but it should be there. A little bit of history on the M3 fighting knife is it was initially used only by soldiers who needed a fighting knife. So that would be Army Rangers, paratroopers, people who needed a knife to maybe take someone out silently, or they were in more close quarters combat. So those were the people who got these M3, the first US M3 knives with the M6 scabbards. That's part of the reason why you get such a premium on these versus the other style, which was actually in competition for the contract at the same time, but this M3 fighting knife style was cheaper to make. So they made more of them, but we also made these K-bar style, I'll call it a K-bar style fighting knife. These were used as both utility and fighting knives. You can see the different design. You can use it to open up crates or barrels, use it on the ship, on the airplane, on the cargo bay, but also to fight. This one here is made by PAL, and it's marked USMC on the reverse, and that's what people love because this went to the Marine Corps. Those guys did a lot of meaningful fighting over in the Pacific for us. And this is a great example. It's USMC marked. You see the early red spacers. We got rid of these spacers later on in 44. Not necessary. But you can see just the much cruder design, and you see just the simple leather scabbard, no designs in the scabbard. The M6 scabbard has a little bit more frill to it because it's maker stamped and US M8 stamped, or US M6 stamped. But there's not a whole lot to these. And a lot of soldiers did a little bit of their personal touches. Mm-hmm. Joel Rosenberg, it looks like.
And don't you love it when they carve their initials? I think this one, too, he put his initials in it. He had no idea that this would be worth a lot of money someday. So if he knew, he wouldn't have done that. What's a ballpark on this early model?
So the scabbard alone can be worth $600 just because these deteriorated a lot. They saw a lot of use, And like I said, they went to our guys who were in the front lines, the Rangers, the paratroopers, the people who were really seeing a lot of action. And that's also why you'll see a lot of these don't have the hooks. The paratroopers especially would round them and cut them right here and then stick them in their boot so that it became more of a boot knife instead of something clanking around on their hip. So you'll see them a lot of times cut here, but this example probably worth around $800 in today's market, whereas the K-bar style utility and fighting knife is more in the $300 to $400 range. I brought this third one as another example to bring it all home for the U.S. collectors out there. This is another Imperial M3 fighting knife. You can see very similar style. It's an M3 fighting knife, but this is just a later example. Notice the blade is not marked at all. This is probably made early to mid 44. I say that because you still have brown early style spacers on the handle. They eventually got rid of that completely, where it was just all leather throughout the handle. This one has spacers, this one does not. But this one has the spacer and it's marked US M3 Imperial on the handguard. So that's a later variation, properly paired with a later variation scabbard. This is the later US M8 scabbard, short canvas frog. At the very end, we had a canvas frog with the hooks. Canvas frog with the hooks was last. But this is a M6. Here we have the M8 scabbard, and much more durable. That's a hard cover scabbard that was much more durable, better for military use. These are also desirable because the United States later realized with the M1 carbine bayonet that came out that all we have to do is really put a loop here and a slot, and we can attach this. This is kind of the predecessor to our bayonet. And then any troop or anyone who was carrying, let's say, a M3 grease gun doesn't have a bayo lug. They would get something like this or like this. So we still use these throughout the war because not every gun had a bayo lug, but we did have the M1 carbine bayonet was also used as a fighting knife.
Are you going to talk about Luftwaffe?
Yeah.
Going back to Germany?
Yeah, back to Germany. Just two examples of Luftwaffe daggers. This is the first model Luftwaffe dagger. Pretty big. I think they're like 16 inches long. This one comes with a chain hanger. Oftentimes these are really lightweight aluminum design and unmarked. But this one here is OLC marked, one of the more popular manufacturers for this type of hardware from World War II. And this is a great example. It might look a little bit worn, but a lot of times this copper coloring on the swastikas is completely gone. And you'll just see kind of a shiny look to it. And this one has an early nickel plating on the metal hardware on the scabbard, which often is more of a lightweight aluminum.
So if you inherited one of these from Dad and it has that copper color, you don't want to polish your bayonet too much.
No, you don't. But a nice shiny nickeled blade as well. You can tell.
That's beautiful.
Maybe it's hard to tell on camera.
Oh, I see a maker.
Yeah, that's Puma maker.
Ah, like the shoes?
Just like the shoes. But this is just a beautiful example of an early Luftwaffe dagger.
Like a variation 1, I think. And don't they have a sword that looks a lot like that?
They do.
I think Randy could probably find one, throw it up there.
Yeah, they have a sword version of this.
Oh.
Then they moved to the second model, Luftwaffe Dagger. This one has the burnt orange handle. I've seen beige, a lighter orange.
Well, now, the Army daggers are in that color, and we already did the Navy.
Kriegsmarine.
It's similar, but Army daggers will have the same handle.
And you can kind of see here, this one was a different color, kind of a goldish color here. Not much of it is left. That's common.
Okay.
You almost want to see that. It's what we call honest wear. We like that. But here's a second model Luftwaffe dagger, just in comparison. You can maybe see more of what I'm talking about with the shiny nickeled blade on the first model versus the second. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but this first model is much more reflective and shiny than this second model. And again, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but Tom, can you see that cross graining on the...
My eyes are not that good. I need a magnification, which is why when I go to a show, I always take a magnifying glass.
But this one is another good example of, you can see that cross graining just screams authentic. Buy me now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it said to me at the show, at least. I swear.
Oh, there's a maker.
This is Gustav Spitzer. Good cross graining. Good job, Gustav. And no cracks or chips in the handle, and nice braiding or wiring. Some beautiful stuff the Germans came out with. I mean, even the detail on the top of the handguard. And again, just thinking about the U.S. knives that we looked at, there's more detail on the top of the handguard than there is anywhere on a United States fighting knife.
Well, they didn't really make those for fighting. That was, like you said, a parade. I do see some gold in that now that you mention it. Yeah. And so that probably was polished in the gold.
Or worn, you know, just your salts on your hand.
You got a couple holsters here, and then my favorite is that flag. So we'll save the best for last. How's that? So go ahead. Tell me about that.
I'll tell you about these holsters. It looks like I have two of the same thing here. They're very similar holsters. I picked these two out because they're two great examples of an increasingly popular holster amongst collectors. At least that's what I've noticed. More and more customers asking me for these. Both holsters have a Waffen acceptance proof stamp on the closure strap. They both are WAA 286. The reason I'm telling you that is because they are both by the same maker. This one, it's a little faint, Randy, but JHG42. That's your maker code and the date, 1942 of production.
And I'll do this
one, JHG41. So this one was made by the same maker a year prior.
Right.
Pretty cool, right? Well, I'm not done.
Wow.
The interior, you don't always see this. The first thing to go, is my grip, and then the second thing to go on the interior of the leather would be the designation ink stamp, is what I'll call it. We'll coin the phrase, the designation ink stamp. This one says Mauser 765, and that tells me it's for the HSC or the model 1934. And then its friend over here says Sauer 765 with an H underneath. Well, can you guess what model?
I know what that is. That's the Sauer 38H.
Perfect.
And right now, there's a bunch of collectors saying, "Ooh, I need that."
Yes.
Because you're right. The guns. I've been selling guns to collectors for a long time, but when you go to find the holsters, they're getting harder and harder to find because obviously holsters deteriorate a lot quicker than the actual gun.
Yep.
So,
and my theory, I'm running with my theory that there's a lot of ACA leading edge PP and PPK holsters. There's Thurman style. There's Hoffman style. And a lot of collectors are associating the ACA holster with the Walthers. So, who was making holsters for all the HSCs and 38Hs and 1934s? Well, JHG is my first answer. It's one of the most popular manufacturers other than ACA where I see the designation for a Mauser or the designation for a Sauer. And sometimes there's no designation, but there are a number of Axis pistols that are 7.65 that could fit this mag pouch and this size of holster. So these being designated to their pistols makes it easier for the collector to know they have the right holster for their gun, and nothing makes us happier than connecting two pieces of history in such a proper way. So that's why I think these have become so popular, and I can't keep these. I'm gonna get phone calls. People want these holsters. But if it doesn't have the ink stamp, that doesn't mean it's not correct for your gun. I think this video will prove that they were making them for the HSC, the 38H, the 1934, and any other Axis pistol.
Yeah, sometimes the ink stamp will wear away, so then it can go with any gun. We'll just call it ambiguous. But toward the end of the war, they actually just made utility holsters that were they don't have any marking, but they'll fit any of the guns, just because toward the end of the war, they were just popping stuff out and trying to get holsters. So they put PPKs, PPs, and so we just call it a utility holster. But these are pretty rare, kind of cool. One other question for you, Kurt. How, when we do guns, I'll do percentage of finish. So when I say 98% original finish, people say, oh man, that's as good as it gets. But these tend to go like excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. Just so our viewers get a gauge, how would you rate these two? Where would you rate these two holsters?
Sure. So I use excellent, great, good, and fair is what I use. I would consider these great. The things that you look for versus, you said percentage of finish, I look for pliability of the leather.
Okay.
So these both have normal pliability is how I describe it in our descriptions you'll see online. Yeah. Normal pliability means it's got a normal amount of give for 80-year-old leather.
And it springs right back.
Exactly, and it's holding its form. There's still, it's not flat here on the rounded edge isn't flat. It's still holding its shape, but it has a normal pliability. The other thing you look for is the amount of cracks and wrinkling. This is often found on the top of the holster where the pivot point is, or the fold or bend in leather. And that's because it gets opened and shut, and the stress comes out just like on your face when you have a long day at work. So I look at the wrinkling, and these both have wrinkling, because worse than wrinkling is cracking. And you can't see how none of the leather is lifting and separating when we move these, and that's the difference between wrinkling and cracking. Cracking will look lifted and separated. So no cracking, that's good. And then the next thing we look at is the interior leather. This one has a very clean interior. The one Tom is holding is not as clean. Someone probably wrote their name and then their worst enemy crossed it out.
Right.
And
if you captured it from a German, you might have obliterated the person's name, which is, to me, it's a shame because it destroys part of the history. You also spend a lot of time when you describe them. You always mention the stitching, which I never. Oh, there's some stitching.
Oh,
but
yeah, I missed that.
It's a big deal to have some of the stitching missing.
Yeah, that was my last thing I look at. I was going to say is the stitching, and you're exactly right. Make sure the stitching is all the same color. See how it's got kind of that straw orangish color, brownish. Same here at the toe.
Especially here. Look at that. That's orange.
Mm-hmm. That's you see it more in here because it's protected from the elements a little bit more. But then also I think something that gets overlooked a lot is the internal stitching. This is oftentimes your dead giveaway. If this looks brand new on the inside or really thick, then it's probably replacement stitching. So you just want to be careful, make sure the stitching is all congruent, and it should help complete the story of what you're looking at.
All right, well, let's wrap this up with a flag. Now, this comes into the category of what the heck is it? Let's hold it up.
All right.
So obviously this is a large flag. We did not get this at SOS. We would tend not to buy something like this because they are heavily faked and they're very expensive. But long story short, somebody sent it to us and it was here when we got back from SOS. So I know this is a flag, also known as a standard. They use this in parades. I know that they are fake. This looks like it has a lot of age to it, but this part looks almost pristine. So Kurt, take it away. Tell me a little bit about this.
I can't tell you a lot. I'm still doing some research. Most people watching this will know the pink designates Panzer, and this would have been a rally flag, or maybe just at the mess hall. They're where they eat lunch together. I don't know, but it's for a Panzer unit. The other examples I found online have a more of like a diagonal cut in here, kind of like how an old medieval flag would look. So I don't know what to make of this. Someone had suggested that these were made in the 60s in the Middle East, but only a couple thousand were made, and there's only a couple hundred still in existence today. I don't know how much of that is true. I just know that I've never seen something like this. And the amount of detail in this embroidering, or there's a word for it, I just can't remember, but it really comes out about a half an inch off of this flag. I don't know if the camera shows it, but
This is almost like a silver bullion something.
Yes, it's bullion. That's the word.
Okay, it's like a silver bullion. Let's swap sides, but it's fantastic quality on both sides.
And it's heavy. I mean, my arm's getting tired holding it up. So it's definitely quality production. And if you're watching this and you've seen one of these before and you know, we would love some more information.
Well, and we are going to offer it for sale at a fair price, but we want to make sure we're fair to our consignor, but also our customers. So we'll get more information. If it's repro, we will determine that and let you know that. And that's just how we roll here at Legacy Collectibles. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today. I know I did. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and we could sure use some more subscribers. So pass it on.